Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm your host, Blake Rasmussen, and we have a fantastic show today for you because we have the two finalists from Pro Tour Phyrexia, Reid Duke and Benton Madsen, joining us via the internet today. They're both calling in, and we're going to chat with both of them. We're going to talk to Reid first, then we're going to bring in Benton and learn a little bit more about him, about their match, about the Pro Tour, about how awesome it is to be back to playing paper Magic at the Pro Tour. But first, we've got a little bit of news. We are bringing back CommandFest. CommandFest is returning. We've got a round of them coming up, and we're going to put the graphic up on the screen that shows where they are coming to. We're starting this first round in North America with events April 14th through 16th in Richmond, Virginia, Indianapolis, Indiana, Orlando, Florida, and Seattle, Washington, hosted by those stores there. Star City Games, Pastime Games, Cool Stuff Inc., and Laughing Dragon. You can find more information about these specific events on the organizer's website. There's an article that will be going up on WeeklyMTG shortly that will have links out to those. As part of the return of CommandFest, there will of course be promos. So let's take a look at the promos. So we've got Path of Ancestry and Arcane Signet. You can learn more about how you can get those promos at CommandFest, again, through those organizers' websites. But we're super stoked to be bringing back CommandFest. These, if you aren't familiar, are kind of mini festivals of just playing Commander. So very excited to have those back. Check with those organizers and check dailymtg.com for more information. Additionally, while you're on WeeklyMTG, also check out the Click Wheel promotion that we are running start at local game stores. So you can get this cool white Phyrexian Click Wheel life counter just by spending $75 at your local game store. You'll get the Click Wheel completely free. So check with your local WPN store for more information on that, or you can check the article on dailymtg.com. Now let's get to the main event, which is the winner of our main event, Pro Tour Phyrexia, from 2 weekends ago, Reid Duke. Reid, welcome to the show.
Hey, Blake, thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm on top of the world. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you really couldn't write it up much better for you. You've been a pro player for a really long time. First paper Pro Tour back. First of all, talk about, before we get to your win, talk about just coming back to play paper Magic again in the Pro Tour.
It's awesome. And, I was in my head looking forward to coming back to competing at Paper Magic again. But when it actually happened, I didn't realize how many of the small things are really meaningful to me. Like sitting down before a tournament and re-sleeving your deck, getting ready to go, and getting your favorite card additions and stuff like that, and your 15th sideboard card. All of that really just contributes to the experience. And while playing from home on Arena was cool in its own way, and I was grateful to have some fun stuff to do over the last few years, it really isn't quite the same.
Yeah. Well, and you were part of a testing house for this as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was awesome. Getting to see a lot of old friends that I hadn't seen in years. People who similarly, it was like we talked frequently, we practiced together, we played Magic together, but suddenly we showed up at the same house. It's like, wow, I haven't actually seen you in 3 or 4 years.
Uh-huh.
That's great. And we just had a really good team dynamic, really good experience. At various points, various people would sort of stop everything to be like, wow, this feels awesome. It's so good to be kind of back to normal and just back in the mix again.
Yeah. So what was your prep like? Because you certainly ended up playing a deck that, you're typecast very much as the Jun guy for not bad reason. The deck you ended up playing was a little bit different than that. So talk us through your testing process.
So it was, I think, obvious pretty early on that Pioneer was a pretty well balanced format, and that there wasn't going to be like one clear deck that you have to beat at the Pro Tour. It's just going to be a medley of different strategies that were all pretty good and had various strengths and weaknesses. So in a format like that, you're not really gonna like break the format. You're not gonna come up with some secret deck that hits all the right notes and you have a big advantage over the field. So instead, it's more about just doing a good job with whatever you choose. And we ended up with this Is It Creativity deck because it had a lot of intangible qualities that myself and others tend to value for a tournament like the Pro Tour. And yeah, the main person behind the Is It Creativity deck was Mike Sigrist, and he had just played a lot with a wide range of strategies, and he was like, you know what, guys, this is the best. This is my favorite, and we agreed.
Yeah. All right. So take me through your day one. How did your constructed rounds go? How did your draft rounds go?
So the draft was great. It was like picking up where I left off. I just have so much fun getting to do a high level booster draft. I navigated into my favorite color combination in this set, which is red and green, and had some close matches where I ended up, drafting well, sideboarding well, drawing well, and eventually just scraping out a 3-0. And I'm like, yeah, I'm back. Like the tournament's starting off on a good note, and I'm really, really having fun playing. I would say I was more confident and more looking forward to the draft portion than constructed. As you sort of set up, this isn't a deck that I necessarily felt at home playing. So I was like, yeah, get the good draft score. That really improves my chances of being able to make a day 2 finish and convert the tournament into something that'll have, something to show for in terms of prize money or my standings for the rest of the year. And then I did lose the first round of constructed, excuse me, in somewhat of a meaningful way, because I lost to Benton Madsen, who we're going to have on in a few minutes. But after that, things went pretty smoothly. I finished 6-2 on day 1 and was still in fighting shape for day 2.
And, you mentioned kind of hitting your goals. What were your goals coming into this event?
My goal was very simple, that I just wanted to show up and enjoy playing a Paper Pro Tour again. I had no expectations about what my record was going to be, or how I was going to perform, stack up against basically like a whole new field of players that maybe I wasn't used to playing against from the old days. This Pro Tour is worth noting. It was special in that you only needed a 9-7 record to requalify for the next one. So, 9-7 in a high level of competition, that is a hard record to achieve. But if you can make day 2, you only need to win half or a little more than half of your matches on day 2 to get there. So I guess the one thing that I really wanted was like, I want to make day 2. I want to be able to draft twice and just like kind of be in the conversation up till the end of the Swiss rounds at least.
Yeah. Well, you were certainly in the conversation. You've been to top 8s before. You've won events before, but you hadn't won a Pro Tour before. So when did you start to feel like this event was different?
Well, I just kept exceeding my expectations, like one step after another, starting right off with that 3-0 draft and making day 2. And I didn't, it was a while before I even pictured myself like battling for the top 8. But then things kept going well and going well and going well. And suddenly I was there and I made the top 8. And I'm like, wow, this is just the greatest thing ever. But still, even then, I didn't have that swell of confidence. I would say the real turning point was when I made it past Nathan Stoyer in the quarterfinals, because he was, one of the toughest players in the top 8, in my opinion. And when I won that, I was like, wow, like maybe I could actually do this.
Well, and there was I don't know if you thought of it this way, but I'm former coverage, so this is the way our brain works. But we thought it was kind of wild that the time you came closest to getting a trophy was when you got second in Worlds to Shahar, who was playing a blue, red, white deck, and you were playing an Auras deck, and we had sort of a flipped version of that. Did that ever enter your head when you were sitting in the finals against Benton?
It did, and actually, when I played Ben in round 4, it was a feature match, and some of my friends kind of joked with me. They're like, "Hey, you're on the other side of the table there," and to which I said, "Well, I managed to lose from both sides of the table," but but yeah, it was kind of a rush. That Boggles deck is very powerful, very volatile. So I think the main takeaway was just like you have to respect it, and you have to be prepared for it to, deliver up some scary draws.
Mm-hmm. So you lost to Benton earlier in the event, and then in the finals you won 3-0. I guess spoiler alert. Not really. Did you change your approach to the match between matches, or was it draw dependent? How do you feel that flipped?
Well, the real answer, I wish there was some like deep strategic answer to that question, but really it was just the quality of Benton's draws. In the Swiss match, he got to keep 7 cards with Glade Cover Scout in both games, and in the finals he mulliganed, I think it was 8 times in the course of 3 games, which is just way more than you normally expect someone to mulligan.
Yep.
And so again, I guess we'll get to hear from Ben himself, but just the volatility of the Auras deck, and to some extent, I knew that was going to be a big determining factor. Like I think I said to Cedric right before I went on stage, I was like, if he keeps 7 cards with Glade Cover Scout every game, I'm a huge underdog. But the Auras deck is not set up where that's the most likely outcome, and so if he catches the bad end of that, then I have a much better chance.
Yeah. I do want to take a step back in your top 8 journey to your match against Nathan, because there's some comments about it in chat that I thought are really good. And one of the things you did in that matchup was you switched between having the combo in your deck and out of your deck, and ultimately brought it back in. Can you talk a little bit about your thinking and jostling back and forth between those 2 configurations?
So part of it is that I thought the 2 configurations were pretty close in quality, and it wasn't super clear to me which was better. Then the corollary to that is it might not be super clear to Nathan which is better and which I'm going to do. So I wanted to capitalize on that by making sure he could not accurately predict what my deck was going to look like at the start of each game.
Sure.
So basically the plan that I settled on was I wanted him to see the transformative Hullbreaker Horror plan one time, and then I wanted to bring the combo back in. Now, a couple things about Nathan's deck. Number one, he had 2 copies of Otawara and 2 copies of Fading Hope, which are just really, really effective at stopping the combo. It's like basically Swords to Plowshares. But also, Hullbreaker Horror is not very good against those cards, so it's kind of tricky for me to win the game, and I have to pick my spots and navigate carefully if I'm going to do it. But the other thing is he had in his sideboard Dragon Lord Dramoka and Sphinx of the Final Word, which are both uncounterable, and I thought he was going to use those as sort of trump cards against my post-board configuration that had a lot of counter spells. So the way I pictured things going was like he would pick a big turn, expend some resources, and try to get one of those creatures onto the battlefield. And then I'd have exactly 1 turn as a window to win the game. And if I couldn't do that, then I would be in big trouble. So that was part of the reason that I valued the combo against his particular configuration.
Yeah. Well, and even the Hullbreaker Horror came into play against that Sphinx of the Final Word, because you were able to bounce it from the stack, rather than, even though it couldn't be countered, it went back to his hand.
Yeah, so that was, a big story of my tournament was like each one kind of worked out well based on the way the cards came off the top. Like in that game, I was able to assemble a bunch of mana and play this draw go game, and then have the powerful flash threat. And then in the final 2 games, I found opportunities to get the combo off, and each one just was exactly what I needed in that moment.
Yeah. All right. So then you get to the finals. You win 3-0. When did it settle in that you had finally won a pro tour?
It's not even fully real to me now. One big moment was when, like, I was just in this totally like dazed state, right? Like unable to really process what had happened. And Cedric, invited me to the front of the stage, and he announced to the room, he was like, "I want to introduce your Pro Tour champion, Reid Duke." And then I was like, "Wow, like it's real. It really happened." And I teared up a little bit in that moment. I was not sure if I was going to be able to complete the interview with Cedric, but that was really really a big moment. But yeah, even now I'm sort of in disbelief. Like there's so much outpouring of support afterwards that I almost couldn't believe it. And I went back and watched some of the coverage this week, and I'm like watching the video, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna watch myself lose to Nathan and realize that this whole thing was like a dream or some, the result of some addled brain that's done a few too many booster drafts in his lifetime. But no, I mean, I'm here, and best I can tell, it's real.
I mean, there's a trophy right in your background, right there.
That is true. That is
Yeah.
true.
Okay, well, I do want to bring on your opponent in that finals match, who, you've been around for quite some time. If people follow the Pro Tour, they know who Reid Duke is. But Benton Madsen is relatively new to the Pro Tour scene. This was his first Pro Tour. He's been around competitive Magic a little bit, so his name may not be completely new. But yeah, let's bring on Benton Madsen. Hey, Benton, how you doing?
Hey y'all, I am doing all right. Although my internet is a bit finicky, so forgive me if I suddenly disappear.
If you just, we'll get you right back. So, Benton, I think the first question we need to answer for the people at home is, who are you?
Good question. It's sort of funny you asked that because I had a bit of an identity crisis during the Pro Tour. A guy from Denmark came over to me and was like, "Hey, you're Benton Madsen, right?" I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "You're on Oars, right?" I was like, "Yes." He's like, "So am I." Anyway, you've been saying your name wrong. I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Your name is pronounced Madsen, right? It's Danish." I was like, "What?" So I've been wondering about that a lot lately. Um, I love how also he led with like, "Oh, we're playing the same deck," but that also unrelated note. You've been
Unrelated,
living
your
a lie.
name is wrong. Yeah.
Your name is wrong. You've been saying your name wrong your entire life. But no, I'm just some guy. I'm a local New York player. I enjoy Magic the Gathering. It's my favorite hobby. I've met a lot of really, really intelligent people playing it, and that's one of my favorite aspects of the whole experience. Yeah,
How long have you been playing? When did you start?
about 2012. A bunch of friends and I sort of did a 5-player game with the pre-constructed decks that they released with M13,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny. One of them convinced me not to kill him because he said we were going to do this a lot, and if we did, he would gun for me forever. And I never played that person again. Never in my entire life. But no, my brother got me into it. He was a really big fan and kept beating me, and that made me very angry. So I started going to my local game shop and started an arms race that led me here, I guess.
Well, okay, so this is your first Pro Tour, but what's kind of your competitive journey? What have you played at a competitive level?
Well, let's see. I've played a number of SCG events. I think at 1 or 2 points I played in the SCG Invitational back when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Played in a lot of PTQs, IQs, and that sort of thing. A number of GPs, mostly not to any success. Probably pretty much all of my interesting tournament finishes have been kind of in the past 6 to 8 months. I made second in an MLCS on Magic Online, ironically with Indomitable Creativity. I've played a lot of that deck. It's really sweet. Yeah, it's sort of weird. It took me a while to figure out how to prep my meals for big events.
Okay.
And I basically didn't have any success until I figured that out.
Really? So your food was the key to your success?
As far as I can tell, oh crap! I'm just gonna let that ring. Sorry.
Just ignore it. It's fine.
So basically, I remember I was like actually the first big event I ever did well in was a Super Sunday series, in which I managed to win a Grand Prix New Jersey in Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had brought my own food with me just because like I didn't know what the eating situation was like at the convention center. I just lost a lot of weight and I really didn't want Magic to be like the reason that my food schedule and my dieting kind of fell apart. So I brought like this thing of steamed carrots and vegetables and chicken with me. And my opponent in the finals, he was the only guy who beat me in the Swiss. And he had brought a bag of Cliff Bars. And I was like, we're the only people who brought our own food and we're meeting in the finals. There might be something to this.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I've started getting in the habit of just like, whenever I go to a big event, I will bring just like a vat of chicken I've made the night before, stored in the freezer of a hotel or in the fridge of just whatever fridge I can find. And that'll be my dinner most of the nights. And yeah, it's really changed just my ability to like think, knowing, not just like having food and knowing that's like good food, but also just like knowing, like just the knowledge of like, this is when you're going to eat and what you're going to eat and where it is. It's like just a massive stress off the mind. There's no like, you know, where are we going out for dinner? You're thinking about that in round 7 because you're hungry.
Yeah.
You know, sort of like some uncertainty in that regard. It's really useful.
Okay. So you said, most of your success has come in the last like 6 to 8 months. How did you qualify for Pro Tour Phyrexia?
I did the arena play-in event on MTG Arena. I got very lucky. I recently sort of started kind of testing with this group of friends, Chase Masters and Aaron Diaz, and they are sharp as heck. I mean, they are two very intelligent people, and they gave me advice on how to tackle the Brothers War sealed format. That really did a lot for my win rate in that. Like, it was also useful because Brothers War was not a normal sealed format. Like it was a 15 land default sealed format. That's very uncommon. Like a lot of people I saw would like play 17 lands flat every game, and it's just like gave you a massive edge to sort of know that this sealed format just works very differently from the last like 8 that you may have played. So yeah, so I got a qualification from the arena play-in, and then I also qualified for Baltimore in the MOCS. Although that was a bit weird. I should not probably have qualified for the Pro Tour through that, except Perkle Master Wizard is bugged on Moto, so I got bumped 1 in my price payout, which included a Pro Tour invite.
Fair enough. How did you end up playing Auras? Because that was not a common choice for players at this event. The one player you met, notwithstanding, and a couple others. But how did you end up on that deck?
That's a good question. When I go out for runs, I frequently come back just kind of thinking about things. Just stuff is sort of floating into my head, and I will sort of be like, I will investigate that when I get back. So one day I was coming back, walking through Central Park. I take runs around the reservoir. If you've ever been here, it's a really beautiful spot. I was just thinking about Michael Lech's Auras list from the regional championships. And I was like, this guy made top 4 of this really big event. It was like the last really big Pioneer event. And like no one has been playing his deck at all since then. And it's getting a massive buff in Razor Bridge Thicket. I wonder if there's anything else in the set that makes it really good, or like is the deck just like good and people just dropped it because they're missing something. I had played a lot of creativity, and I thought it would probably be a really good choice for this tournament, but I also felt like the creativity lists that I saw were doing well, I didn't understand anymore. Like Impulse just never worked for me once in testing. Like I would always just look at the top, like the 4 middest cards in my library and be like, it just could have just said drawn a card. It would have been basically the same thing. That's definitely not how it actually works, but it's how it felt like it works. And I was like, okay, I don't understand what I'm doing here. I need to find a new thing. And I ran across, I just like checked the spoilers, saw Scarel was a card, and was like looking at the list, like, it's probably pretty good. Like Light Pause, turn 1 Scarel, turn 2 Light Pause, it's like a thing that I couldn't do before. That seems like a really strong start to a game.
Yep.
I ran a few leagues with it. It felt like it was winning. Felt like I was getting lucky, but also like maybe that would keep happening. I don't know, just a gut feeling, really.
Okay. So you get to the Pro Tour. You went 8-0 on day 1 and led the field. And you seemed kind of genuinely surprised to have done so. What point during the event did it hit you that you could make the top 8?
The last round of my Swiss tournament. I basically, it had basically did not feel possible to me, even up until like round 11 or 10, I still
Mm-hmm.
sort of was like, this is probably not going to end terribly well. The draft on day 2 did not go great. I started at 1-2, and I was sort of like, well, that's going to be setting the tone for the day. Brad Nelson came over to me, and he just sort of told me, like, look, zone out the noise, take it one game at a time. And I was sort of like, yeah, I know that. But I had known that intellectually. I hadn't really been like taking that on as like a, sort of as a mantra, like sort of really concentrating on just like this singling out everything else that's going around me. And when I was on, like when I had 2 win and ends, I was like, okay, there is some chance it's going to happen. I'm going to try my best to ignore that and just play some games.
All right. So you make the top 8, and you immediately have to play against a Hall of Famer, and eventually had to play against a total of 2. Did that enter into your head at all? I mean, this is your first Pro Tour. Uh-oh, did Benton freeze? Benton froze.
That's the look when you get paired against a Hall of Famer.
That's the look when you get paired against a Hall of Famer. All right, we'll come back to Benton as soon as he comes back. So why don't we start, because I do want to talk, Reid, about the finals match, and once Benton gets back, we'll talk about it from both of your sides. Did we have him back? There he is.
Sorry about that. Like I said,
It's all right.
bad.
Okay. Hall of Famers. You played against 2 in the top 8. Did that enter into your head at all, or how are you feeling once you got paired against Gabe and went on from there?
Gabe was a really comfortable match for me, mostly just because I think that like whenever I'm playing against someone else who's a very verbal person, it usually means I'm sort of have a license to talk, and that makes me feel very comfortable. I am someone who talks when I'm nervous. People probably may have noticed that about me. But I do it because it is good. It's a good thing for managing my nerves. So that sort of did a lot to just kind of keep me calm. And again, I think that like Gabriel is, as far as I can tell, someone who doesn't mind table chatter. He's someone who's known to indulge in the occasional called shot. So some of the best moments on coverage history is like him just calling the top of his deck.
Yeah.
So that felt pretty comfortable. I mean, it's the type of thing where one thing that I realized a long time ago was like, if someone drove 10 hours to Indianapolis for a Magic the Gathering SCG event, the chances are they like play a lot of this game and they sort of know what they're doing, and they have every chance of just like beating you. And so I never really like expect to feel favored against anyone that I play.
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot with sort of just keeping my head in the game.
All right. Well, so now let's fast forward to the finals. We talked to Reid a little bit about things from his side. You had played Reid once before in the Swiss. What were your thoughts heading into the finals?
I really just still couldn't believe it was happening. It sort of seemed to me like a surprise that I was in the finals. I was pretty sure Takumi was going to take me out in top 4 because his Ossify build of mono white was very strong, and it felt like it was very strong against what I was doing. So I didn't really have any plans for if I beat him or what to expect. I just kind of, I remember like they said to us like, okay, we guys want you to walk toward the table and then sit down just so we can like get that on camera. I was like, oh, cool. So we did that, and then we sat down. And then Reid pulled out his deck and started shuffling. I was like, oh, we're playing. Oh, that's okay. I thought, okay, my bad. I was like, oh, we're starting. Reveal Gigantha, I guess. Yeah. No, I just, my mind was blank. I was just, I was with my friends. They were happy for me. I was happy to be with them. Just with my buddies,
And then after the event, when did it sink in that you had gotten second at your very first Pro Tour?
I think, Reid said that it didn't feel necessarily surreal to him to be a champion yet. I feel a pretty similar way about coming up in the finals. I just, I don't know. I still kind of still doesn't really, when I beat Gab is probably the closest that it came to being like, okay, this event has gone very, very well for you. This was a top tier weekend. It would be a while until you have another day that goes as well. This is the highlight for the month, definitely the year probably. It's not at any point it hasn't really been any more or less real. It's just sort of been like, that is. I'll tell you one thing. I did notice that like I was exhausted afterwards. Like, I didn't realize this at the time, but I think the amount of like cortisol in my body and like just stress I was feeling must have been massive because I just crashed when it was done. I was just like I couldn't do anything for like a couple days. I was just like completely drained. Yeah.
Before we get to my last couple questions, so anyone watching at home, if you have questions for Reid or Benton, feel free to put them in chat, and we'll throw them out, and we'll ask them whatever it is you're looking to find out. So Benton, have you, since your Pro Tour win, have you been back to your local game store yet?
Yes. I did. In New York, it's sort of like hard to narrow down what game store is your local game store because you have like a couple that are sort of equidistant by train most of the time. Oh crap! Oh, not again.
No, there it goes. All right. All right, Reid, I'll throw some of these chat questions at you, and we'll get Benton back in a sec. Reid, what do you think of the Pioneer metagame post Pro Tour?
I actually just finished like 40 minutes ago writing up the Pioneer power rankings. I sometimes do these power rankings pieces for Channel Fireball, but I studied up. I looked at all the results, all the stats. And I was like, boy, it's really hard to put a ranking on these decks because I think Pioneer is very balanced, very diverse. The decks that get the highest volume of play don't always have the highest win rates. One like favorable or unfavorable change in the metagame can shift things around. So I guess that's the answer. I just think it's really, really diverse. I think there's probably 15 different archetypes that you can reasonably choose and do a good job with. And I think that's the sign of a very cool, engaging format.
Great. So Benton, the question we just asked Reid, and we'll come back to the local game store story in a moment, is how you feel, what do you think about the metagame for Pioneer after the Pro Tour?
I think it's great. I think that Reid's made a lot of really good points about it. I would say that like it's a really good sign that you could play Auras, which has like 40 1 and 2 mana spells in it, or Fires of Invention, which is like a 6 and 7 mana spell centric mid range deck in the same format. Those are two completely different approaches, and everything in between is viable. I would say that like. Yeah, it seems like a really good format. I think that like the task that players will have to like figure out when like they're building their deck is like, okay, there are like how do I like what is my plan for stealing back the play in mirrors? And I think that's like a really interesting challenge to have when you're thinking about like your deck choices, which is I think sort of like a really it feels like it's in a pretty healthy place. There are a lot of questions you have to sort of assess when you're looking at what you want your deck to do and how you want to do it. There's sort of like as many tools as there are players. Yeah, I love it.
Great. All right, so back to the question we were talking about before. What was the reception like back at your local game store when you came back after the Pro Tour?
It was good. I felt like I owed a lot of people there a lot because, I sent out an SOS on Discord, like, anyone willing to like test the creativity versus Auras matchup because I need to sleep. And a couple of people reached out to me and I was like really grateful to them and it was really nice to see them again. I went to like just an EDH night and, I felt like because I had a high level pro finish, if I brought my own deck and won with it, people would be annoyed at me because they'd be like, oh, well, you built this to win. It'd be like, fair enough. So I just borrowed people's decks. And it was just a good time. It just felt really nice to like, people were generally very polite about it. Like I didn't have any moment where I was like, oh man, this is sort of worse than it used to be. It was better to be unknown. It was just sort of like, some head nods and a few congratulations. I was like, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Nice. Very nice. All right. This next question from chat, we'll start with Benton and then we'll pitch it to Reid as well. Any advice for up and coming Magic players looking to enter the Pro Tour?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. I would say that my biggest piece of advice is probably actually the food thing. It really does make a big difference when you like know what you're eating and when you're eating, what you're eating, and like how just that's going on in the course of a weekend. I would also say like figure out like when you get to an event hall that you have to like play an event in. figure out what the chair situation is like. I think that sounds weird, but like when you look like I do, I'm not a typical average body type. I imagine Reid probably has this problem too. A lot of chairs are just not very comfortable to sit in, and if your back is hurting like the entire way through an event, it's going to crash everything. Like it's just, you can't expect your brain to function when your back is in pain. It just doesn't work. So those are two really big things I've like grown to focus on over time. Is like, what am I like if I show up and like I'm just having trouble, like these just chairs aren't for me. Like what are my contingencies? Some people I know bring a cushion or whatever. It's really important. Like events you'll want to focus on. The arena play-in is really, really hard. I mean, it's worthwhile. It queues you for a lot of things, but I have to say I got quite lucky and needed to secure a path through that. Probably your regional championships and your RCQs are going to be like the most standard ways. So pay attention to what the RCQ season is. Figure out, I mean, really the best resource you can have for anything you want to do in life, and Magic the Gathering especially, is just good friends you trust who will do some of the thinking for you, and you could do some of the thinking for them. It's just a massively beneficial. I mean, I think that probably both Reid and I had like 6 or 7 sounding boards we talked to about our decks before we registered what we played.
Reid, similar question. What advice do you have for a player who's struggling to make their first Pro Tour and keeps barely missing?
Biggest thing is quality of practice and not just quantity of practice. I think there's a tendency to like play and play and play and never stop to catch your breath, and then sort of at the end you're like, okay, now what? But if you give yourself more opportunity to learn and digest what's going on, be introspective and be honest about what's causing you to win and lose games, and also make sure to get exposure to players who are more skilled and experienced to you than you. Some people are fortunate enough to be able to sit across the table and play with someone who's a Pro Tour player, but that's not the only way you can do it. You can also read articles, watch streams, watch tournament coverage, try to pick up things that are different from the way you're playing, and then incorporate them into the way that you practice and the way you play.
Yeah. All right, Reid, another question for you. So this is your first Pro Tour win, but can you tell us about other big wins that mean a lot to you? Grand Prix Miami stands out to me. Loved that Jund deck.
Yeah, Grand Prix Miami was awesome. I won with Standard Jund, which is one of my favorite decks of all time. There have been a couple Grand Prix. Another one is Louisville in Legacy, where it was a really good feeling to be able to like win with my own deck that I had worked on a lot.
Was that the land tax deck?
No, that's a good memory, Blake. That I love the card land tax. That was a Sultai True Name Nemesis deck. Okay. It was right after Leovold had been released, and you can play with that in Legacy. That was cool. Other big wins, I would say, the Mox was huge. That was the first time I really had a big breakthrough in Magic back in 2011. I won the Magic Online Championship Series. We won the Team Series in, I want to say, 2018, which was a really great experience as part of the Ultimate Guard Pro team.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, any one of those moments where you're sort of like playing at a level you've never played at before, or being able to come home after the weekend and be like, yeah, I did it. Like I really couldn't have done any better. I achieved my goals. And sometimes getting to share that with teammates, all that stuff is really great and memorable.
All right, next question for Benton. Benton, I feel like this might be someone setting you up for something, but people are getting to know you. So what is Benton's favorite joke? Noting that, let's keep it to a clean joke.
What is my favorite joke?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm being set up for here. Can someone?
I don't either. Maybe you're not being set up. Maybe they're just genuinely.
I don't know. My favorite joke. I don't know. I watched a deep fake of the presidents playing card games the other day. That was very funny. I don't know if it's my favorite joke, but hearing Joe Biden say "skill issue" was hilarious. I don't know. It's a great meme if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I'm lost. Is this is it getting my life pause killed
No
while
idea.
I do enchant it with rune sustenance? Because that was a good one, but I'm not sure it was my favorite.
All right, let's switch Benton to a magic question. Would you say now that Boggles is your new favorite deck of all time?
Yeah, I would say that I have a pretty close attachment to it. I'll probably build a life pause commander deck at some point in my life, just to relive the highlights.
Uh-huh.
I am someone who usually gravitates to playing like blue-red decks because I like tempo and combo is sort of like the two ways that the speeds that I would like to play Magic at if I can. Like in Modern, I play a lot of blue-red Breach, which is a very similar sort of
Uh-huh.
speed. But Boggles, I was like surprised by how well it scratched that itch because the Glade Cover Scout games feel very much like tempo. Oh crap! Oh wow!
Okay, that's fine because we got a question here for you, Reid. So you both shared some good advice on breaking through in Magic events, and the question is: all of this great advice contradicts Shota's success. How do you account for that? Yeah, you must know Shota fairly well.
Okay, well, I'll take an alternate bit of advice. Just be like Shota.
Just be like
Everybody
Shota.
out there, if you're struggling, it's easy. Just be like Shota. Done, right?
Is anyone like Shota? Is that? I
No,
think that's
of
yeah.
course not, Blake. That's the whole issue. Is you can be like, you could say like, oh, I wish I had this sort of mystical, like transcendent expertise, but that's just easier said than done. And for most of us, we have to actually get there through the 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 tough, gritty path of losing a lot and having to learn and grow. And I'm sure that Shota has his share of struggles as well, and sometimes we just don't see them. But yeah, I mean, he is just a genius at Magic, and he does things his own way, right? So he knows every single step of the way, from deck building to sideboarding to the way he's playing the games, like what he wants to accomplish, and he does it his own way, which is why it's very difficult for people on the outside to understand what's going on there. But even if we have to take a different path, we're trying to get to that same point where we have a very complete and well-rounded understanding of everything that it takes to win a match of Magic and do well in a Magic tournament.
Yeah, I think my favorite kind of Shota memory that just showed how different he is as a Magic player and just at this whole other level. Was it a Worlds where he was playing that Teamer Aether Vial deck? And,
Yep, the Players Championship.
Yeah, the Players Championship. And it was a deck that wasn't on any radar. It just didn't exist prior to the event. He made the deck, and not only did he make the deck and succeed with it, but he played it super fast with all these decision points that seemed like you would have to actually stop and think about it. And then the deck didn't really do much after that because everyone else wasn't Shota. So yeah.
Shota's terrifying.
Yeah.
He is intimidating to sit across the table from.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's also like the MTG ELO point leader right now, right?
Possibly. I don't know.
I think
I think I saw the same thing.
Wouldn't surprise me. All right. Next question. We'll do this for both of you. We'll go with Benton to start. What is your favorite mechanic?
Oh, interesting. I would say, That's a really interesting question. What's my favorite mechanic? I'm a big fan of adventure, which, I mean, the adventure cards themselves, I think, get sometimes like a bad rap because of just the fact like there were like they saw a lot of play, so sometimes like people got a little sick of them. But I really like when you play a Brazen Borrower and you're not like on an Innkeeper deck. I feel like how it plays in the game is really sweet. The same thing is true of like Bone Crusher Giant. I think that like the adventure cards tend to be just a really nice sort of Swiss Army knife. They always feel good. They never feel broken. It's a really nice sort of like it gives players a lot of options while also being quite flavorful. It just seemed to me like a really sweet, well-designed, fun to play mechanic with a lot of room for design space. It's sort of interesting to me that if you'd asked me about this like a couple weeks ago, I wouldn't have been surprised to say something so recent. But that's probably the one that I enjoy the most.
All right, Reid.
I was cycling through them all in my head. I'm gonna go with First Strike. Let's just.
Really?
I'm a big fan of keeping it simple. I think the beauty of Magic is like in the rules of the game rather than like making the individual cards really like complex and wordy. And I think just having a basic mechanic that sort of subtly impacts combat and gives you an advantage sometimes if you're a blocker on a complicated board. I think that stuff's cool. I don't think there's any one mechanic that stands out to me as like I want to see this in every single set for the rest of all time.
All right, there goes Benton again, but that's fine because the next question is for Reid. Reid, first of all, congratulations. Now that you're finally a Pro Tour champion, do you intend to take a rest from the competitive game, or on the contrary, does it give you more motivation to keep playing at a high level and win more titles?
That's a great question, and there's a little bit of both. So one example is I am not going to go to the regional championship in San Diego because first of all, that's the opposite coast for me, so it's quite a long travel, and now I don't need to compete for the invitation anymore. So I mean, that's a sweet tournament. I would love to go be playing, but I think it's an opportunity where I have earned myself like a little bit of rest, and I always find that I can perform better if I'm playing a relatively smaller number of events and just putting a little more focus on the ones that I do play in. So that's my goal, is not to spread myself too thin, but to choose, 5 or 8 or 10 big tournaments per year that I can attend and do a good job at.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that question was for Reid, but Benton, how do you feel? Does this inspire you to play more? You already went and played Commander at your local game store, but does it inspire you to play more? Do you want to take a break?
So because I queued through the arena plan, I'm queued for the arena championship, which is in a month. And so for me, I was, and maybe this is a little different for me than for Reid. This is my first big tournament finish, and I'd be mad at myself if I followed it up with some last place finish at another tournament. And because the arena championship is like a pretty large tournament, I definitely want to play it. It does have qualifications. I come out of a similar place in the RC, which is that like I may not go just because I'm already qualified for Worlds, and that's the main thing that like would matter to me be playing for. But with the arena championship, it definitely makes sense to go. I think it queues for the next one after that. And if I don't take it very seriously, I will last place because I don't know what's going on in Historic, man. I need to figure that out. That's a format that I've never really quite had the time to focus on. I usually like gravitated toward Pioneer because that's what the RCQ format was.
Yep.
So I don't want to embarrass myself there,
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Benton. So back to the tournament. Do you regret that aggressive mulligan in the second game of the final?
No, it was correct. I'd do it again.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, if you told me like, you're going to end up mulling to 4 and losing, then I would keep a 7-land hand because I don't technically know that's like I would keep like over a guaranteed loss, like knowing the future. But the hand was a mulligan. I will say you could change a number of cards in that hand and make it a keep. If you make Shram a light pause, it's a keep. If you make either the 2-mana enchantments a 1-mana enchantment, it's a keep. The hand for reference was 2 Pathways and Iganjo. You can tell I've watched coverage. A Shram, a Skarelv, an Alpha Authority, and an Altic Glitters. The logic here, if maybe it's so bold, is if you have a light pause instead of a Shram, sure, you get blown up by removal, but the light pause will at least raise the turn 5 combo. And if you have a 1-mana enchantment over a 2-mana enchantment, then Shram can potentially raise the turn 5 combo. That 700 hand loses either to 2 pieces of interaction or a turn 5 combo. Reid would have likely shipped anything else. Like he's either keeping the hand because he thinks he's going to combo quickly or because he thinks he's going to have enough interaction. He wouldn't keep a hand, I don't think. That's like 4 lands, 3 Fable of the Mirror Breakers, which is like the only thing I can think of that Shram hand beats,
All right.
Yeah, I did have 2 burn spells in my opening hand, so.
There you go. This is for both of you, but we'll go back to Reid. Do you have any pre-match rituals?
Not specifically. I always just tell people do what you need to do to feel good when you sit down to play. So yeah, I mean sometimes that's going out for a short walk or just getting a moment of quiet, but anything to get a mental reset and sort of clear the slate from whatever happened in the previous match.
Mm-hmm. Benton?
My answer to I got a lot of them. Ethiopian coffee is the first. I really love Ethiopian coffee before big tournaments or big tests. It's just something that I find like really kind of puts me in a good place. Although it does make you jittery, which some people may have noticed. The other thing is I like to meditate if I can in the mornings. Just take 20 minutes, sit in the quiet, and just, you'll think about things. You'll sort of process your thoughts on it. You'll leave it knowing whether or not you actually want to play Magic today. You know what I mean? Which is sort of like, usually the answer is yes, because I love the game, but that is an important thing to like, Magic's a great game, but there are some moments in life where you just have to prioritize triage, so that's a useful thing to just sort of have some time to check in with yourself. I'm a big believer in just taking time to read in between rounds, just because a good complicated book can sort of like take you off of the last match and what you've been doing and just sort of like be like palate cleanser for your brain. Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, something like that. That's like really archaic and hard to like, you need to reread the sin sentence like multiple times, is really useful for me, just because it sort of really demands your attention, or like a nice, longer form novel. And then you'll also, I remember a friend of mine on Discord, he said to me, I've never met Benton before, but from what I've heard, I just passed a guy doing squats in the convention center hall, and I'm assuming that's him. And he was correct. I try to work out every day, and if I can't, it's all calisthenic, just because I want a workout that I can take with me anywhere. I don't want to like be dependent on. I don't want to like say, I don't have my weights, I can't work out. So I will be the weirdo in the corner of the room, doing stretches and squats and all that. The other thing is that the stretches do a lot just to keep your back from hurting from sitting in chairs all day. So I do a lot of that sort of thing too.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time. I want to say congratulations to both Reid and Benton. Seriously, really great finish to an amazing event. I know on the coverage side, we were all super excited for Paper Magic to be back, and you guys put on a show. So congratulations to you two. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.